What if I told you there was one man, one single human being, who mastered every subject that existed: biology, physics, logic, politics, poetry, psychology, ethics, astronomy? Not one of them, not two, all of them, at the same time. And not just mastered them, he invented most of them from scratch. Before him, these fields did not exist as organized knowledge. After him, the entire world thought differently. His name was Aristotle. And here is the part that will shock you. He was not born a genius. He was not born rich. He was not born into power. He was a boy who lost everything at a young age, a boy who had no one. And yet, he became the private teacher of the most powerful conqueror in human history. Alexander the Great, the man who would go on to conquer the known world, learned everything he knew from Aristotle. But that is not even the most extraordinary part. The most extraordinary part is this. After Alexander conquered the world with his sword, Aristotle conquered something far greater. He conquered the human mind. For over 2,000 years, every scientist, every philosopher, every scholar in the Western world built their thinking on the foundation that Aristotle laid. Alone, with no internet, no libraries of modern knowledge, no teachers who could match him, just a relentless obsession with one question: why? This is the story of Aristotle. And once you understand how he did it, you will never look at failure, loneliness, or starting over the same way again. In 384 BC, in a small town called Stagira in northern Greece, a boy was born who would one day become the most influential thinker in human history. His father, Nicomachus, was the personal physician to the king of Macedon. This was not a poor family. This was not an ordinary family. From the very beginning, young Aristotle was surrounded by something most children never had access to: questions about how things work. His father did not just treat patients. He observed, he examined, he recorded, he asked why, and without even realizing it, he passed that obsession to his son. But then, when Aristotle was still a young boy, his parents died. Both of them. Gone. He was left in the care of a guardian named Proxenus, a man who, to his credit, did one thing right. He sent Aristotle to Athens to study at the greatest school the ancient world had ever seen. Aristotle was 17 years old when he walked through those doors. He had no idea that he would stay for 20 years. He had no idea that the man waiting inside would become his greatest teacher, and eventually, his greatest intellectual rival. The student who surpassed the master. Plato saw it immediately. This boy was different. While other students absorbed what Plato said and memorized it, Aristotle questioned it, not out of disrespect, out of an unstoppable hunger to find what was actually true. Plato called him the mind of the school. He called him the reader. Because Aristotle consumed books the way other men consumed food, constantly, obsessively, without ever being satisfied. But here is what made Aristotle truly unique. He did not just read, he observed. While Plato sat in the world of abstract ideas and theory, Aristotle walked outside. He looked at animals, plants, stars, rocks, people. He collected specimens. He dissected creatures. He recorded what he saw with his own eyes. Plato believed that the highest truth existed in a perfect, invisible world of ideas. Aristotle believed the truth was right here, in front of you, if you just paid close enough attention. This was not a small disagreement. This was a fundamental split in how to understand reality. And Aristotle, the student, was willing to tell his teacher, the master, that he was wrong. He famously said, "Plato is dear to me, but truth is dearer still." Think about what that takes. To sit across from the most respected philosopher in the world, the man who gave you everything, and tell him, with respect, but without hesitation, "I think you are mistaken." That is not arrogance. That is integrity. And it is the rarest thing in the world, the rejection that changed everything. When Plato died in 347 BC, something happened that Aristotle did not expect. He was not chosen to lead the academy. After 20 years, after being called the mind of the school, after being Plato's most brilliant student, he was passed over. The leadership went to someone else. Imagine that moment, 20 years of your life given to one place, and when the position you had dedicated yourself to finally opens, they choose someone else. Most people would break. Most people would become bitter. Most people would give up. Aristotle left Athens quietly, without drama, and he did the most powerful thing a human being can do when the world closes a door. He opened his own. He traveled to the coast of Asia Minor, set up his own small school, and started doing what no philosopher before him had ever done systematically. He began studying the natural world. He dissected fish, birds, and marine creatures. He cataloged hundreds of animal species. He began building what would eventually become the first real science of biology. He was rejected by the most prestigious institution in Athens, and his response was to build something bigger than Athens had ever imagined: the teacher of the world conqueror. In 343 BC, a message arrived that changed everything again. King Philip II of Macedon, one of the most powerful rulers in the ancient world, wanted Aristotle to come to his court, to tutor his 13-year-old son. That boy's name was Alexander. History would later call him Alexander the Great. And Aristotle said yes. For 7 years, Aristotle taught Alexander everything he knew: philosophy, science, medicine, logic, literature, politics. He did not just teach Alexander facts. He taught him how to think, how to question, how to reason, how to look at the world with curiosity instead of fear. Alexander later said that he owed his father his life, but he owed Aristotle his mind. Think about that. The man who conquered the known world, from Greece to Egypt to Persia to India, said that his mind belonged to Aristotle. That is the power of one great teacher. That is what it means to shape a human being from the inside, the school that changed the world. When Alexander left to conquer the world in 335 BC, Aristotle returned to Athens. But this time, not as a student, as a founder. He established his own school called the Lyceum. And here, for the next 13 years, Aristotle did something that had never been done before in human history. He organized all human knowledge. He walked and taught at the same time, moving through the covered walkways of the Lyceum, his students walking beside him, listening, questioning, debating. They were called the Peripatetics, from the Greek word for walking. He produced written works on logic, biology, physics, ethics, politics, rhetoric, poetry, the soul, memory, dreams, sleep, and the movement of animals. He did not just study these subjects. He created the framework through which they would be understood for the next 2,000 years. His system of logic was taught without modification in universities until the 19th century, nearly 2,000 years. Unchanged, because he got it right the first time. The biggest idea. People today think of Aristotle as someone from a dusty textbook. They could not be more wrong. His ideas are alive in everything you do. Every time a doctor examines a patient by observing symptoms, that is Aristotle. Every time a judge weighs evidence before reaching a verdict, that is Aristotle. Every time a scientist forms a hypothesis and tests it against reality, that is Aristotle. He believed in one thing above everything else: the world is knowable. If you observe carefully enough, think clearly enough, question honestly enough, you can understand anything. He called the highest form of human happiness Eudaimonia, a word usually translated as happiness, but that translation misses everything. Eudaimonia does not mean feeling good. It means living fully. It means using your unique abilities to their highest potential. It means becoming completely and totally what you were made to be. He believed that every human being has a function. Just like a knife exists to cut, and a good knife cuts well, a human being exists to think, to reason, to act with virtue. And a good human being does those things fully, courageously, and consistently. Not occasionally, not when it is easy. Every single day. The legacy. When Alexander the Great died in 323 BC, the political mood in Athens turned dangerous. Anti-Macedonian sentiment swept the city. Aristotle, who had taught the Macedonian king, became a target. He was charged with impiety, the same charge that had killed Socrates. But Aristotle did something Socrates had refused to do. He left. He said, "I will not allow Athens to sin against philosophy twice." He went to the island of Euboea. And there, 1 year later, in 322 BC, he died. Alone. Far from the city he had given his greatest years to. He was 62 years old. After his death, his works were preserved, copied, translated, and carried across civilizations. Through the Islamic Golden Age, Arab scholars translated and expanded on his ideas when Europe had forgotten them. Through the medieval period, Thomas Aquinas built an entire theology on Aristotle's logic. Through the Renaissance, scientists and philosophers returned to him again and again. A boy who lost his parents too young, a student who was passed over after 20 years, a teacher who poured everything into one student who went on to conquer the world, a philosopher who was driven out of the city he loved. And yet, he is still here. 2,400 years later. Still teaching, still asking, still changing the way the human race thinks. The lesson that Philosophy of Successful People wants to leave with you today is this. Aristotle did not succeed despite his pain. He succeeded because of what he did with it. Every rejection pushed him to build something greater. Every loss pushed him to look more carefully at the world around him. Every obstacle became a question, and every question became a discovery. You do not need a perfect beginning. You do not need the approval of the institution. You do not need the world to recognize you while you are alive. You need one thing: the relentless, burning, unstoppable commitment to keep asking why. Because the people who change the world are never the ones who accepted the answers they were given. They are always the ones who refused to stop questioning. If this story moves something inside you, subscribe to Philosophy of Successful People. Because here, every single week, we go deep inside the lives of the greatest minds who ever lived. Not just to learn history, but to find the wisdom that changes how you think today. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join thousands of deep thinkers who refuse to stop asking why. See you in the next story.